enjoy the small accomplishments of what is that you do. So if you're starting in the martial arts, don't feel like you have to get everything perfect. Enjoy the fact that you're learning something every single time, and try to get one thing good. Try to get one thing better every single time you come down.
Welcome to our podcast. Today we have on a Uechi-Ryu practitioner who was instrumental in my development as a martial artist and instructor, Sensei Marcus Traynor. Sensei Traynor began his karate training in 1990 under Grandmaster Buzz Durkin. Since 1997, he has been the head instructor at Buzz Durkin's karate school. In this interview, we talk about how the martial arts has shaped his life, his growth as a teacher, and his thoughts on passing on the martial arts legacy. If you are someone who trains in the martial arts or desires to be a better teacher, then I think there's a lot to be gained from our conversation. Please enjoy Sensei Marcus Traynor. Mr. Traynor, thank you for coming on today and talking with me.
The pleasure's all mine, Bill. Nice to see you.
So I think we'll start with, how did you get started in the martial arts?
I was an early teenager. I was 12 when I began training. I think, like a lot of people, there was growth anxiety I was dealing with, and that time of age with boys at that time. There was some small, external family issues that were kind of kicking in. So a lot of things were going on at the same time, and I was spiraling a little bit. And my father actually lived next door to a martial artist that trained under Mr. Durkin, and he reached out because it was me that thought about martial arts at one point, and my father reached out to him, his old family friend, and he recommended here, and that's how I got into it. So,
how old were you?
12.
12.
12 when I began training. Yeah.
What part of the martial arts training do you think helped you? You kind of say you were spiraling, getting on track. Helped you get on track?
I would probably say the physicality. I always looked at myself as a weak person, and I didn't have any problems with sports or anything like that, but I had a very negative body image of myself, and I think the physicality gave me something to shoot for, something to aim for, and purely self-competitive, mind you, and to push myself to a different level. The people who I saw and worked with were very open, and in spite of the fact I was the youngest person in the class I was working in by a good margin, but they were treating me like the rest of everyone else that was in the class, which I found very comforting, and allowed me to kind of go on that path a little bit more. So I think it was the physicality married with the openness that everyone was willing to work with me and feel like I could achieve something. Yeah. So I think that's what kind of kept me into it. So
you had a lot of positive role models as a young man guiding you.
Yeah, first two teachers that I had a Monday class and I had a Wednesday class, and they were very entertaining. It was very entertaining because right off the bat I realized how different people looked at martial arts. So whatever instruction I would get on Monday, the Wednesday class would almost completely contradict. And I remember spinning my head and talking to my fellow classmates. I swear they told us not to do that last time, and going back and forth. But both of them, both very great role models, and the supporting people that were in there. Very great role models. Some of them I still work out with to this day, and they were 100%. Honest with me. They really wanted me to see me succeed, and you can kind of feel that from them, and that attracted me a lot and helped me push my own boundaries a little bit more.
That's good. You and me, I've known you a very long time. We've
gone through a bit.
We've seen our fair share of different methods of teaching or training with partners, and it's good to have those kind of people that are there to push you, but also to be understanding and to guide you. And it's also funny. I was working with someone today, just talking about different ways of doing things. I think, even though we have a set way of training, especially for beginner students, having early on you're training that mindset that there are different ways to do the same thing.
Yeah, and I remember talking to several of my fellow classmates of it. We were joking right outside in the parking lot about this, and like the conclusion was, okay, so in front of this class we have to do it this way. In front of that class we have to do it that way. I'm sure they both have good reasons. Let's figure this out. And it was never done negatively. It wasn't like one teacher was saying, oh, he does it wrong. It was nothing like that. They were expressing their point of view.
Right.
And it was really. That part was intriguing to me, that there wasn't just one way of doing something, there were multiple ways of doing something. And a young 12-year-old's mind can get blown easily by concepts like that.
Yes.
So.
And we've seen some people that can't grasp the fact that there's
Yes,
more than one way.
yeah, right, yeah.
So how do the martial arts, besides harnessing that energy, how did it help you outside the dojo?
I think with any training program, whether it's, I mean, some people use, their church life, some people talk about military, how it changed them. Martial arts falls into a similar category. It's a hill to climb. And, when you stand at the base of a hill, the hill seems very tall. When you stand at the top of the hill, it doesn't look that tall anymore. And when you look at the next hill, you realize that all the hills have a similar quality to it. So I think the mentality of, I know how to accomplish this, now I can harness that positivity and attack the next project that I'm working on the same way. Well, if I was able to do this, then I'm sure there is a way of doing this, whether I want to devote that type of energy into. So I think the positiveness of just accomplishment, I think, goes a long way with that. And martial arts, I don't think is the only way of doing that. I think other people have harnessed other things of doing that. But martial arts, I think, has an advantage that it can be used by more types of people.
Right.
So you have someone who's in their 80s, obviously the military probably won't work for them, and certainly religious groups, other people don't want to be a part of. But martial arts tends to be a little bit more open and broader spectrum, so they will find a home with that and accomplish things in their own right.
How has your training evolved over the years? How have you changed the way you approach your training? Started as a 12-year-old to where you are now. How has your martial arts evolved?
That is, I would say, not an easy question for me to answer, but I think it might have more to do with my goals as a martial artist. So my goals as a martial artist when I was 12 was to work out with the strongest person that was in the class, to try to see where I was strength-wise to them so that I could get stronger. I think that was, if you could cut away all the fat, I think that's the core of what I was trying to do. Trying to see if, not in a competitive sense, but in the sense that, would this person respect me as a contender into that? And I think going from that to teaching, the goal shifted to becoming, to try to help other people achieve whatever their goals were. So therefore, my personal training would change to kind of go along with that as well. So even like physical fitness routines, which I may not have paid as much attention to when I was earlier, become more prominent. So I could set good examples for the students I was working with. As time goes on, and as time went on, more along the lines of, what is this whole group going to be working on? So like for a long time, for instance, our association didn't do competitive sparring, and I didn't do competitive sparring. I trained in sparring, but I didn't compete it. So then we decided, hey, let's push this envelope. So now we're going to get into more competitive sparring. So I started doing more training along with that. And you did a lot of training in that direction. We talked about how we're going to integrate into that. So I think that for me, a lot of the times it changed as the group I was working with changed and what their goals were. So I kind of went along with that, which was fun because it was kind of like watching a different movie, because every group of students, as you know, comes in, they all come in with their own different thought process, and they come in with their own what they need to work on. So now it's like a new puzzle that just got reshuffled and thrown on the floor. So let's figure this one out. So I think I find that I enjoy seeing what the next wave of people are going to be, or what they're going to be working on. And of course, now a lot of people are dealing with group anxiety issues, dealing with COVID issue, coming out of the COVID strain. Everyone's been, staying more home and remote and kind of going back out in the field and dealing with anxieties like that. Now we're working with that and how to combat that. Even just doing drills just to help them help get more comfortable people getting up close. So everything kind of shifts and changes. But I think I would have to say probably the students I work with help direct my training a lot.
So really, it's like how you kind of look at how you're going to be able to give back to this group of students and then adjust as you go for your own training.
Yeah, and like I said, I love training. So if someone gave me a new thing to work on, to me that's a new fun thing to play with on the floor anyway. So if you have a 10-year-old who comes in who who suggests something, and it's, oh, that's a good idea, and we'll go off and go play with that for a little bit, and the crew will work on that too. Say, hey, that is a good idea. Let's see where that goes. So I think that sense of adventurism is a huge part of what being a martial artist is, and not being closed-minded enough to think there's only one way of doing something. Right. And so to open the mind is, okay, how does this add to what it is that we're working on? You don't need to change everything, but adding is neat and fun to go into that.
And you can still train and maintain your core Uechi curriculum. You're still pounding arms. You're still practicing your katas,
Yep.
kumites. You're still doing sanchin. You're just adding a little bit extra onto
Right,
it.
right. And the extra can be whatever it is that we want to be. But again, I don't think martial arts is the only group that does that. I think in any type of sport, or any type of military, even any type of religion, they have their core, and then they add something onto it, and the add something onto it is what people remember the most, but the core is still the core. So it doesn't take away the need for the core, but it adds more fun onto it.
What to you is the Budo to your training, the martial value of your training? How does that affect you inside the dojo, outside the dojo?
Are you asking, like, what is the root purpose of what it is that we do?
Maybe.
Okay. That I find, I think is very basic. I think every human wants to be able to take care of themselves. And whether you're a 12-year-old teenager who has a lot of self-doubt issues, or if you're a 5-year-old who just wants to see something neat and fun, or if you're a 35-year-old who thinks that they're overweight they visualize themselves as an overweight accountant just sitting behind a desk the whole time, and they want to do something other than just that. I think everyone wants to feel like that they can protect themselves and their loved ones, and I think that is not something that they may say when they walk in, because it's very personal. I think it's very fundamental. It's very personal. It's something that everyone needs and wants, but it's something they may be very sensitive about admitting, that they feel vulnerable.
To some people, it might sound corny.
Right. Yeah. And absolutely, and that too. But I think at the end of the day, with all the fun that we do, and I think there's a lot of fun that can be done into it, and all the drills that we do, and there's a lot of ways of doing all the physical benefits that we do, the real Budo is their ability to know how to take care of themselves, how to defend themselves or their loved ones, I think that's the fundamental. I think that's what keeps traditional martial arts, what the edge that traditional martial arts has versus sports martial arts. And again, not that I have anything against that, but I think that's where that part has a slight bit of an edge into it. I think if you focus your classes purely on that, I think you're going to lose students, but that is what they're trying to make sure that they can maintain. So yeah, I would say that's where my Budo comes. Okay. That would be where I would put it. And I think that's fundamental, so I would say that's something worthwhile.
Sure, at the end of the day, it's a martial art.
Right.
You got to be able to protect yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, people say, well, this world's gotten more violent. I really don't think this world has gotten more violent. I think this world has always been violent. And sometimes things remind us of how violent things can be and how fragile things can be. I mean, I know you were young when 9/11 happened. I was in my 20s at the time, and one person made a neat analogy, was that the world was reminded once again that the world is a violent place. Reminded harshly that it was a violent place. He said, but not everyone is full of violence. He said, we clogged up all the cell phone towers. You couldn't get a call going through. He said it wasn't because people were saying that they hated each other. They were all wondering that make sure their loved ones made it through. So there's that yin and yang that always exists within us. So I think the world always has violence in it, and you have to make sure you're protecting of that for the sake of making sure that your loved ones are all there. I think that's very valuable.
Sure. And even us, I mean, we're very spoiled. Like, we live in New Hampshire, which is a very safe area.
Right, yes, yeah.
Our violence or crime rate in some of the cities that are high crime rates is nothing compared to other places.
Of course,
in
yes,
the country or in the world. And,
right.
But even then, like, stuff does happen sometimes, and you want to be able to protect yourself or your
Absolutely,
loved ones.
yeah. Absolutely.
So you've been responsible for a lot of instructors, myself included, coming up the ranks and teaching. Let's start with this question. Like, what's your favorite thing about teaching?
I'm not sure if I enjoy teaching as much as I find it a responsibility.
Okay.
I'm sure you've known me long enough to not be too surprised by that answer. I mean, I do enjoy working with people and seeing that, that light of realization. Oh, that was really cool. A shy person becoming more comfortable with themselves, in all those things, and that's always fun to see. But I think I'm a big fan of the phrase "paying it forward." So I was very vulnerable when I was training. If the first group of people teaching me martial arts handled me differently, I don't know if I would have stuck. I don't know if I would have stuck with it. I like to think I would have, but I mean, certainly it would have been a different mental experience. The fact that they were as strict with me as they were, because they were trying to get something accomplished, but as comforting to me to help me get through it, was as good as it was. That certainly helped it. Whether it would have happened anyway or not, who knows? But it certainly helped it. It certainly pushed it forward. So the idea of paying it forward, appreciative of my instructors from behind. Two of them just passed away last year. Helping someone, inspiring someone else like I was inspired, I think is in many ways could be looked at as an obligation. I mean, you're a teacher, you're a father, you take your responsibilities very seriously. And while I have fun and you have fun, it's a responsibility. You want to help them accomplish what we were able to accomplish. So I would say enjoy. I like seeing the light of the faces when they realize they catch on to something or they're doing something But I think it's more of a I look at it more as a duty, or even in a slight extreme, an obligation to help make sure that someone else was able to get what I have, and not just selfishly keep it
Right.
to myself. So that's probably the best way I can answer that.
You kind of want to continue the legacy of this space here. We're at Mr. Durkin's dojo right now. This space here where you came of age and were brought up, kind of continue that legacy.
Funny, as a side story, it affects all of us in a lot of different ways. And I was talking with a student about our age, and she's the highest ranking student at her own school, and they just changed the locations. Just modernize and change it and everything like that. And she's very much a strict and very much a by the book type of personality.
I know who you're talking about.
And she called me up almost in tears about the transition that was happening. She called me because she knew I would understand. And she said, I have to go there and I have to do a bunch of katas on the floor. It says, and everything was going good, but just, there's a lot of memories. She goes, I have had relationships that began and end longer than what was onto there. My children trained on that floor as well. So there was an emotion that gets attached to it. And therefore, like I said, going back to the responsibility part, that emotion tags in responsibility to go on with it. So the idea of helping keep a legacy going on is the responsibility of, I would think, of a good student, that your job is to keep that thought process going, or to keep, at the very least, what the goals of what the teachers were to move forward. So I would go along with that. It was a neat story because she rarely shows her facial emotions in front of me, but that time she did, and it was something we both agreed on. So
the dojo is a powerful place. I've had similar thoughts, just mine going like, heaven forbid something ever happened to this building, like
right.
The emotion, the time spent here, the accomplishments of the building. Heaven forbid something ever happened to this space and we had to move somewhere else, like how would that feel?
Right.
And it's a special training wherever people train. For us, it's
right. Yes.
Here, there's a lot of emotion involved with it, especially when you're doing since 1990.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot. So kind of going back to teaching then, do you feel when you're training instructors, whether they're young or middle-aged or older, like, is that still the same, just you're still trying to work that obligation, or do you take a little pleasure in seeing them succeed? Because you've had a lot of people come up the ranks.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, there's lots of people that I like to think I've helped.
I'm not just talking about me, by the way.
I'm coming to you, don't worry. A lot of people like to think that I've helped, and some people like yourself who've built their own school, and and that's always joyous to watch that, of course. Although I think you would agree that a philosophy that I've always liked was that people aren't clays to be molded; they're flowers to be unfolded. So I think someone like you would have been as successful as you were, regardless of what the scenario was around you, because you had that drive in you. I said, but that doesn't lessen the responsibility of the person helping the person out. So the fact that some of the people that have had success, and you're doing a very, very good job in your neck of the world, does that give a little bit of pride to you? Oh, yeah, a little bit, yeah. But I like to think that the very least at the end of the day, and I know you feel about this about your students, is that you at least fulfilled part of your obligation to help keep that going. And my father always made a joke that, if he died tomorrow, could his kids, my father has 11 kids, could his kids keep on living? That's what the responsibility is. At what point was that the case? And that's his job, to make sure that they could sustain themselves. And I think as a martial artist, we have that same type of thought process. If everything breaks down, could this person continue that legacy? Could continue the mentality behind what it is that they're working on? And we've seen plenty of success models that has happened that way. Some a little more rough around the edges than others, but
sure, we've seen some stuff. And maybe this is the same for you. I always had the mindset of not just continuing that legacy, but also trying to make them, whether it's at teaching or the martial arts, better than you are.
Absolutely, yeah. To give them opportunities that maybe it took a while for you to have would be one way of doing it. Hopefully that your students don't make the same mistakes as repeatedly as I did, to help cut that curve a little bit.
We both had our fair share.
Oh yeah, but ultimately to get the joy out of knowing that you could protect yourself, get the joy out of training, take the joy of self-discovery, and to inspire to inspire people to go in that direction. So that's, yes, very, very, very helpful. And so do I take a little more pride in the teaching? Of course I do, but to me that's even the higher level of responsibility. Now you're trying to help someone else fulfill that level of responsibility. And for the most part, and I'm sure you deal with this too, regardless if they're an 8, 9, or 10-year-old, or they're someone in their 30s and 40s, they, for the most part, take that responsibility seriously. They don't look at this as, oh, geez, we're going to play around with this. They look at this as they see what you do, and they're in awe by what you do, and they appreciate what you've done, and they want to help with that. And I think when you have a 5-year-old or 8-year-old come up to you and ask you to be a part of the teaching group, I think in their own way they have that mentality, like a 35-year-old is saying the same thing. Right. And there's exceptions, and some people more arrogant than others, things like that. But for the most part, I do find that that's what they're paying you a huge compliment, that they appreciate you and they want to do that, which of course ups the ante for the responsibility.
Sure. And if you're modeling your behavior properly, like you're being a positive role model, they're just going to try to model that back.
Right.
I just started my teaching program. Finally, I have students that have been around long enough.
Excellent.
To start our Storm program, and it's kind of cool seeing, which again, obviously I'd seen that for
right,
years.
Of course you have, yeah.
My first little red belt getting in front of the class and warming up them, or working with a kumite or kato with someone, it's pretty neat.
It is. Especially you see them, how nervous they are, because in our heads, in their heads it was a million years ago, but in our heads, it wasn't that long ago we were just as nervous standing up in front of there,
I remember the first time I did the warm up in front of the class, and someone was in the back, said, I'll help you out if you need it. And then they start talking to someone else. I'm like, deer in the headlights, I don't know what to do. Actually, it was funny. I was watching this one kid go up, and he wasn't nervous one bit. He was just confident, went up, did his thing. Yeah. And there's me in the back, clenching my teeth, like, do it right. And his parents are doing the same thing off to the side, like, this kid doesn't care. Me and the adults are more nervous than the kid are.
Yeah, it's okay. It took me only, I think, about 5 years to realize when Mr. Durkin said, I'll be in 5 minutes. That was his code for you have the class. He just didn't want to say it that way. And it took me 5 years to figure that out.
I caught on a little quicker.
You did. You were definitely the generation faster than me on that one.
Yes. How long did it take you to get over not being nervous when he was standing in the back of the room watching you teach class?
Oh, I haven't gotten past that. Yeah, no, it's still.
I hope you get there.
It still shakes me right down to my toes. But that's kind of the whole point of mentorship. it's not that, I mean, if Mr. Durkin's standing in the back of class watching you, you're nervous not because you think you're a bad teacher. You're nervous because you want to look good in front of your mentor, because you still value his opinion on something. I mean, there's certainly plenty of times when you and I have disagreed on things, but it wasn't that we didn't value each other's opinion. And that's what the idea of mentorship is. And that's a very tentative thing, because it can be broken really, really easy, but it's a very valuable thing when it's held on. I think like going back to, if you look at military religions, martial arts or anything that falls into that category, I think that's one of the common denominators, that there was mentorship in there. Now, whether the mentorship was a designated mentor or someone that just happened to help you over and over again, that mentorship mentality is powerful, and it takes a while for someone to trust someone else to that level when they walk up to you and say, what do I need to work on? And they're completely vulnerable to you saying you are horrible. They're completely vulnerable, and that takes a lot of trust to put themselves in that spot. And that's a cool thing, because with that level of trust, you can learn a lot.
Yeah. And you have to make sure as the mentor you don't break that trust.
Absolutely, it's a huge. That's what I'm saying. We're going back to the responsibility. It's a huge responsibility to keep that mentorship going, so it's valuable. But also to not push to the point of breaking, because that's where you want to be.
Hopefully, people also remember that this is something that I've always found entertaining with the martial arts, is that people forget that even as black belts, even as senior black belts, we're still people. We're fallible. We make mistakes.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing I find bordering on a letdown. So you have to, as a mentor, you have to make sure you're prepping them correctly. Is that they look at? I remember watching my white belt instructor, the person who taught me my class, and I worked out with him. I mean, he was way in the front row, I was way in the back row, in the first class. And one of my Wednesday instructors ran the class. He was one of the senior students that was there, and the person giving my white belt instructor a correction. And that just blew my mind. Right, that just blew my mind. And it wasn't like a harsh correction. It wasn't like he called him out in front of the class. He walked up and just gave, like you and I do. He said, hey, by the way, make sure you do this. He says, wait a minute, he doesn't need a correction. And that blew my mind. That going into. So I think at one point every student has that, oh my gosh, this person is a human as well. And you have to make sure you're ready to catch the student when they kind of go into that zone. I think one of the big ones is everyone looks at the teachers, the black belts that are around them, they're all these unstoppable creatures of force. Whether they're 10-year-old junior black belts that for some reason can zip around them like nobody's business, or this big hunk of muscle that seems like that nothing can hurt this person in any way, shape, or form. Of course, we help that image a little bit by performing in that way, so they can look at it that way. And then they become a black belt, and then like, well, I'm not as strong as them. And you have to explain to them, well, no, this is a process. It says you are a lot stronger than you were before, but now you keep on learning. And by the way, we still get hurt all the time. I mean, one mentor of yours and an old friend of mine would joke all the time, and he has that very ashen face whenever he trains. And he remember him telling me one time saying, it still hurts when they hit me hard. So please stop hitting me hard. I mean, I don't show any effect because I'm not supposed to, but it still hurts. Can we please calm that down a little bit?
I had to remind one of my green belts the other day that it's not great when I get hit in the head. Don't hit me too hard on the side of the head, please. Can we sparring, I'm like, I'm just having an off day and I keep getting whacked. I'm like, again, not perfect. I'm going to get hit, like, maybe chill.
Can we not do this? Yeah. So yeah, but that's where the mentorship comes in, to explain that there isn't a exalted position, there is a position of excellence, and you constantly are pushing towards that position of excellence. And just because you feel like you have things you need to work on doesn't mean you haven't done a good job to get to where you are now. And that's where a good mentorship helps. And like you said, that's something important to build, important to preserve, and but very powerful if you can make that work. And there's a lot of benefits to both sides, I would say, but definitely on the student side.
I agree. How does it feel to you to have you have your two kids that train and now teach and work at the dojo, both 4th degree black belts?
Yes.
How does that feel to be able to watch them go up the ranks and grow up here and now continue seeing that legacy?
I would say that's probably the most surreal. I mean, I've had plenty of very, very, very positive experiences, and plenty of things I didn't think that I would be worthy of, because I still have that 12-year-old self-doubt boy still in there, so in there somewhere. But probably the most surreal part of that is and I did it with quite some pride because I had to go away to out of state to a martial arts convention, and someone was asking me if I had children. The person did not know me that well. I says, my 2 children are actually running the dojo right now, and there was a lot of pride in being able to say that,
cool.
and in front of everybody. I'm very, I mean, they have stuff that they need to work on, like we all do, but I'm very proud of what they accomplished, and it kind of gives me a little bit of clarity that maybe I'm not that bad as a father. I mean, I'm not that bad as a teacher if they're willing to go as far as that. So yeah, I would say there's a lot of pride involved in that.
Whenever Bella comes down to help with the Henry tube, to help with the black belt testing, not black belt, sorry, Q testing at my dojo.
Yeah.
Always get.
And she loves going down too.
Yes.
It's like, but to her, it's like the same thing too. Someone asked the other day, "Why do you keep on going?" I says, "Well, because he helped me." And that's, and it's not like forced obligation, but it's like, no, this is what you do. You know, they helped me, I helped them. This is how this works, and that's very cool.
Well, she was down. I don't think Henry can make the last one that we did. I can't remember exactly which one I'm thinking of, but she was. We had everyone talk at the end of class with all the instructions. She got up and she started teaching, and all the parents are just looking at her and, oh, like this young 18, 19-year-old person is just
Confident,
such confident and commanding the room and just like running the class. I'm like, all right, I'm stepping aside. Like, this is cool for me too. Like, just getting very good praise.
And I'm sure you got a lot of. I mean, you worked with her for a long period of
Just
time.
let them beat me up as they grew. That's my contributions.
And Bella liked beating people up.
Yeah. So, besides the family aspect of it, do you have any other favorite martial art memories that kind of come to mind?
I mean, there's a lot. I've certainly. I mean, you and I both work, probably me a little bit more so, but you certainly have done a lot. We work in front of the curtain and behind the curtain. We're not classic students of martial arts. We're the ones who help make sure the wheels work the right way. And with anything when you see that, you see some of the not as suave mechanics of how something needs to get done. It needs to happen in order to get the good things to be done, and that's a good obligation to have. So when you see, there's a lot, and there certainly have been plenty of challenges, but I can't think of one day where I was not excited about coming down to the dojo to work on whatever that was needed to work on at that time. Some of the more fun accomplishments, I mean, seeing you and the other people that went up through the ranks, just you guys doing your own thing and cruising in your own direction. Us working together, but you guys cruising in your own direction. I thought I was very impressed and very prideful of all that. I mean, we've had our meetings at times where you would literally contradict me in front of everyone else.
I still will.
And I find that awesome, because I remember what you were like when you first became here, and you would not have done that, and now you have that strength to do that, and that's fantastic. So I mean, seeing people like you, seeing other people that I've mentored through years, get their master's rank and really feel their own martial artist, not just someone who worked out under Marcus or someone who worked out under Mr. Durkin, but in their own right. Probably that's the biggest pride. See my kids train with it, that family aspect going into it. I think the other big thing that I enjoyed the most is helping develop that, being one of the people who helped develop that community of martial artists. And as you know, that's something that we both enjoy the most about, to the point where I think most of your wedding party was on both sides were martial artists.
I mean, I met my wife through someone at the dojo.
Yep.
So.
And on my wall is my family at my wedding, and all the martial artists who were at the wedding. I have a big family, so and the martial artists that were there were almost the same number as martial artists that were there for that. So it's that building that family, and as like any family, it's not always Thanksgiving dinner. There's a lot of other stuff that kind of goes to help build that family, and that's that. But that to me makes it more special, that people saw through some hard times but still stuck together. Saw through some hard times, were able to get to that point because the family meant that much to them, and that goes a long way. I mean, there's plenty of people that you and I both would call if we had an emergency at home or with a family member or anything like that, and probably would be a martial artist that we know. They would at least be on the top 5. At least be out of the top 5, there'd be 2 or 3 of them that were people that we met here, and we knew that they would come. I remember one of our friends, one of your friends, one of the people I taught. My brother was his best man at his wedding, and he joked about, he broke down the side of the road, and he called him up, and the guy got there in 5 minutes, which was impressive because the speed limit was 30, and it was a lot more than 5 minutes in order to get there. So, but that enthusiasm, of course, I'll help because I would say that's the coolest thing of what. Like I said, I like to think you guys would have done that anyway. You guys probably would have, but that I was a part of, which was nice.
Well, thank you.
Well, you guys have always been a source of inspiration for me in every sense of the word.
Do you have any advice for anyone who might be interested in starting the martial arts or hesitant in doing so, or someone who is interested in teaching and might be considering, like, how do I get started?
This is advice that was told me, and it's not advice I took easily.
Okay.
Take it slow. And you know me enough to know that is not advice that I take easily. No, and I don't mean take it slow. I don't mean be lackadaisical about it. And I always misunderstood that that's what they meant by it. Enjoy the small accomplishments of what is that you do. So, if you're starting in the martial arts, don't feel like you have to get everything perfect. Enjoy the fact that you're learning something every single time, and try to get one thing good. Try to get one thing better every single time you come down. And nowadays, video gaming is a big thing, and I mean, the video games I came up with and what kids have nowadays is completely different. But I would joke with them a little bit on, when you play the first level of a video game, is it as hard as the second level or the third level? No. Start off easy and work your way hard, and martial arts works that same way. So get good at one thing, and then get good at something else, and enjoy the fact that you're getting good with that. Teaching, I would say the same thing. Enjoy the fact you're able to help one person with one thing, and that person will remember the fact that you helped them with that one thing. And I can tell you, I mean, every martial artist has a couple of key mentors that were there for them a lot of the time, but they also have a lot of people that they remember fondly that helped them with just 1 or 2 things.
Sure.
And one person who I know who really wasn't a mentor to me, but happened to be testing at the same time as I was, and was senior to me, and whenever we were in class together, he would go out of his way to grab me, pull me aside, we'd work together. And I didn't realize at the time that he was testing as well, so that was one of the reasons why he was doing it. But he just helped me. And it was the relationship, as far as mentorship goes, really didn't go much further than that. We always stayed in good touch and always been good, had a good relationship. But it wasn't really a mentorship like you would look at in a movie, like what a mentorship was. But I remember to this day that he was the person who helped me get me ready for my first degree black belt test. And there was loads of other people who did a lot more. But you remember the small incidences as well. So people appreciate that. People appreciate that the person who wasn't in the front and doing all the stuff in there, that there was a 10-year-old kid who walked up to a 9-year-old kid and said, hey, put your hand in a tighter fist, it'll do you better. In many ways, that's even a better mentorship because that 10-year-old kid didn't need to say anything.
Right.
And so I say, the small stuff is good stuff. And people, both sides appreciate that. And it doesn't matter how old or young the person happens to be, they do appreciate that. So
I'm having flashbacks to one of the senior students in one of the classes I was getting ready for my black belt, and I'm just remembering the bruises.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But you remember those, and
I do.
And
those are good ones.
I mean, you expect Mr. Durkin runs the whole school, so of course you expect him to do the job, and he does a fantastic job.
Positive bruises, by the way.
Positive
I
bruises.
was proud of those bruises.
Absolutely proud of every single last one
I
of
did
them.
not back down. I probably should have.
And probably a couple. We all probably should have a couple of times. I remember one time having bruises from like this pot to this pot because I was working on my sparring and this guy had a monstrous of kick and I just kept on blocking it. And I was very proud. And I showed several people and the expressions on their face was not pride. I said, geez, what's wrong with you? But you expect the person in front of the class to be the person who is going to mentor mentor? What surprises you when someone else who doesn't look like that they will go out of their way to do that? Because that's has a much more sincere ring to it, and people appreciate that a lot. So I would say enjoy the small stuff more. And that's certainly something I struggled with a lot.
That's good life advice in general.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, those are pretty good closing thoughts, I think, unless you have anything else you'd like to share.
I think traditional martial arts is something that is very needed in nowadays culture, but realistically, I think it's always been needed. That's why it's always been there. And I think the importance of it ripple effects on so many different levels. Dave Kovar, one of our mentors, Dave Kovar, mentioned once, multiple times, where you and I were there for a couple times, he said it, that he said, we have, in the United States, we have obesity issues, we have confidence issues, we have bullying issues, and he listed off a bunch of key ones that have been hidden in the media lately. He says, there's nothing that attacks that so squarely than what martial arts does. And I know you believe that, I know, and I certainly believe it, that it is a very cool responsibility to have to help someone help them get through those issues, and that's something that martial arts has and can do. And I think it's a worthwhile venture for anyone, whether to be teaching or whether to be working out or just doing anything like that. So, yeah, I think this is a cool thing to do, and a very necessary thing to do.
I agree.
That I know.
Mr. Traynor?
Mr. Leith, a pleasure.
And an honor.